You could go ahead.
Thank you, Roy, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I am Sarah Alexander, and I want to just extend to you a very warm welcome to this Getting Ready to Teach session for the T-level technical qualification in finance, specifically looking at the occupational specialisms today. What we're going to be having a look at specifically today is now on your screen. So essentially, we're going to have a little look at the structure of this particular, well, the T-level altogether, but also how the occupational specialisms work. We're going to have a little look at how the assessment is going to work, but we won't spend too much time on that because there is a session dedicated to that later on. We're also going to have a look at how you are planning on delivering the occupational specialisms. And really then starting to think about how we translate that specification into actual delivery of the occupational specialisms. We'll then start to have a look at the teaching techniques that you might want to employ and really how to draw on the core content to help to inform the work on the occupational specialism. There'll then be an opportunity to ask any questions if you would like to. And I'll also just highlight where you can find any further support towards the end of the session. As Roy said, be very grateful if you'd use the group chat function, because that means that all other participants will be able to see the group chat function and may also have similar questions or may want to add to your questions as you put them in there. If you have a question that is just for me and you'd like to keep that private, please use the Q&A box, but otherwise use the group chat box. So let's have a look first of all at the TQ, technical qualification, TQ for short. Let's have a little recap of the structure. Now this, I'm sure none of this is brand new information, but this in particular, I'm sure is not brand new information. The TQ, as I'm sure you're aware, is split into two components. So we have the core and the occupational specialism. The students must pass both components. And as you know, we're going to focus on the occupational specialism component in today's session. As you can see, there are 4 occupational specialisms. Each has 600 guided learning hours, and your students can only take one of those specialisms, and that is one of either retail and commercial banking analyst, or the investment banking and asset and wealth management analyst, or the insurance practitioner, or the financial compliance or risk analyst specialism. Now, the core and the occupational specialist components can be delivered however you feel is best for your students, and you need to perhaps consider within that the integration of their industry placement and access to expertise and resources at your centre. Now, obviously, that's going to vary between centres, as well as in terms of the local labour market, in terms of what industry placements are available. But in terms of planning delivery, you could potentially deliver the core in year 1 and then the occupational specialism in year 2. And I know some of you that were on the session we delivered last week were thinking about that. You could alternatively decide to deliver both components at the same time, or you could stagger it. So you could perhaps start with the core, do a little bit of dual teaching, and then finish off with the occupational specialism. That's just 3 of the options. I'm sure there are many, many iterations of that that you could make work. And that really is about knowing your own students and knowing your own resourcing. So therefore, the choice is yours. We're not specifying how you should deliver the TQ. So the aim of the rest of this session, then, as you know, is to look at to give you an introduction to the occupational specialisms, and then have a little look at how we can actually deliver it. Before we go any further, I just want to have a little look at assessment, because that does make a difference when we're thinking about when to plan, when to deliver the various components. As you can see there, each occupational specialism is assessed via an externally set project, and previous events on getting ready to, or getting to understand the specification, and future events on the assessment itself, we'll go into this in a lot more depth. But you'll see there that there are varying amounts of time for completion. It's done over a number of days, and there's a varying amount of marks awarded. Each project is externally set, externally marked, and will first be available in March-April 2024. So that perhaps needs just to be taken into account when you're deciding when to deliver the occupational specialism content. So, for example, you may feel that starting with the occupational specialism may be a big stretch for students to recall the knowledge and the skills that you've taught during that at the end of the second year of their programme, if you decided to perhaps start it in this September. So that may then have an impact on planning for delivery of the core content, as it may be worth considering taking advantage of the assessment window at the end of the first year. So that is that one. If we now have a little think about what you're actually planning to do, just a little straw poll. There's not very many of you here today, so I'm hoping you'll all participate. I'm just wanting to get a bit of an idea in the group chat, if you wouldn't mind. Could you just give me an idea of which occupational specialisms you're planning to deliver? Is it going to be all four, which would be wonderful and rather ambitious, but are you planning on picking just the one? And if so, which one? Yeah, no problem, Karen. I saw your message. For the rest of you that are here, could you tell me which of the specialisms, using the chat box, you are planning to deliver? I've lost it. There we go. Thanks, Aaron. So retail and commercial banking. Yeah, I think that's going to be a popular choice, actually. Yeah, everybody else? Interestingly, it's actually my background, retail and commercial banking. Yeah, there's another one for retail and commercial banking. I think, yeah, and another that the college will want to offer all four. Fantastic. Okay, thanks, Karen. Yeah. Okay, so retail and commercial banking. Yeah, I do think that, I think that's everybody. I do think retail and commercial banking will be a popular one. I wonder if that's because of access to local labour, thinking about what's available. Oh, sorry, thanks, Martin. Yeah, we've also got financial compliance and thanks, Aaron. We'll speak afterwards. I might have a little bit of a window. So yeah, financial compliance and risk. Thanks, Martin, for that one as well. But I think that yeah, the retail and commercial banking is going to be a popular one, based on the fact that I think there is perhaps better access to industry placements, or that's not probably the right way to put it, but it's perhaps geographically a little bit easier to get hold of. Yeah, very much my background. I was a banker for about 8 years, so it's I know that it's a popular career and worth looking into. Thank you for that, everybody. That's great. So the next slide again kind of just reiterates those four occupational specialisms, as we've already spoken about. Just to sort of let you know that each of them is actually presented in the same way, and we're going to have a look at that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. With the retail and commercial banking and the financial compliance and risk analyst, which is the two that you guys, the people that are here are actually delivering. Both of those have 4 performance outcomes. The investment banking and asset wealth management have 5 performance outcomes. Each of the specifications for each of those occupational specialisms does have a summary of those performance outcomes. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a moment. That summary includes details of the skills, and I think this is an important thing just to remember here, that the T-level altogether is really about trying to help students to deliver, oh, sorry, not deliver, that's not the right word, to develop was the one I was going for, develop the skills that they need in order to be able to succeed in those careers, which, you know, it is, we've always tried to deliver employability skills as much as we possibly can in order to move students into future careers. But I think that certainly how the T-level differs from previous qualifications is that there really is this huge focus on how we actually develop those skills. And I think it is maybe a subtle, but I think important difference between what we've been doing and what we're doing now. And the thing that we're thinking about here is the skills that are needed in order to be able to achieve threshold competence. And those are the key words for that. And that knowledge that they will need to underpin the skill application across the various areas of content. And then they'll have an opportunity then in the tasks that they complete for the assessment in order to demonstrate that they have those skills, or that they've been able to develop those skills at least. So this is developed in the detailed content, which I'm about to show you, further information of breadth and depth of the knowledge. And I think certainly from when we were talking about the core content in last week's session, we were saying that that was perhaps one of the challenges for delivery, was where is the breadth, where is the depth, you know, how far do we need to go? And I think certainly as far as we're concerned at the moment, the information that's in the specification is as far as you need to go, in that it should give you a good outline from that. Are there any other challenges that you guys can think of? Again, please do use the group chat. Are there any challenges you can think of for teaching the occupational specialism components? And if so, have you got any ideas how they could be addressed? Perhaps it'd be good for people to share. No, got nothing coming through. Excellent. Okay. So I won't linger on that, and let's instead look at the next bit of important information. Yeah, sorry, I'm just coming through now. I think my computer must be a bit slow. Yeah, I've got knowledge and industry experience going to be challenging. Yeah, absolutely. Specialist teachers, specialist delivery staff. Yeah, I think, and actually this was something that that myself and the person who's in charge of all of this were talking about only the other day, that yeah, this is the biggie, because you need people who are obviously expert teachers and are professionals in terms of being able to deliver outstanding lessons, but you also need people who have that industry experience, and there's not many of us out there, and it is quite difficult to try and put those two things together. So I suppose what we need to think about then is kind of how we can overcome that in terms of potentially, I mean, I'm sort of thinking off the top of my head here, but I'm wondering if there's anything we can do in terms of this wonderful new online platform that we have. I'm wondering if there is a market out there for specialisms to be able to perhaps get people to speak online to the students if they couldn't do it face to face, in order to be able to bring in that sort of industry specialism. Similarly, Pearson are also planning on doing some more training in order to be able to upskill our wonderful teachers in centres in order to be able to address that problem. So that is on the cards, and there are things planned for that. Sorry, I shall move on now to the next slide, which is on your screen now. I'm going to double check the chat. Oh, thanks, Aaron. Okay, so yeah, as soon as that's available, we will communicate it with you. So on your screen now, I'm very glad that I chose retail. Sorry, Martin, but I'm very glad that I chose retail and commercial banking, because that does seem to be the one that most people will be going for. On the screen there, you can see an example of how the specification is laid out. So it shows a section from, as I said, retail and commercial banking, but actually all the specialisms are laid out in the same way. This particular one is taken from Performance Outcome 1. And I don't know about you, but I always think, gosh, there's more things, more sort of like letters and acronyms and various other bits and pieces to think about. So this one is obviously special to T-levels. This one's taken from PO1, or Performance Outcome 1, and we're looking at operating ethically and professionally in all interactions with customers and clients. Now, I think it was Karen who said that you were thinking about, or your college was hoping to be able to deliver all four. You will notice that there are actually some similarities between the different occupational specialisms, and you may well find that there's going to be options to co-teach bits of this, particularly this one, because anything sort of, any of the specialisms will have an element of this ethical and professional practice involved in it. So the way this is laid out, at the very top in the green box, we've included the skills from the general competency framework that the students need to have the opportunity to demonstrate through the knowledge and skills covered in that performance outcome. Then you've got the grey box, so that's the first specialist skill covered by this performance outcome. So we've got S1.1, outline the key features of an ethical and professional culture in retail and commercial banking. So S is the skill bit, as opposed to knowledge, which is the K bit. Probably quite obvious, but just worth putting it in there. 1, because it's performance outcome 1, funnily enough, and point 1, because it's the first one within that performance outcome. Then you get that underpinning knowledge underneath. So this is the bit that the students need to demonstrate, the knowledge that they'll need in order to be able to demonstrate the skills. So in this particular case, K 1.1, culture and conduct in retail and commercial banking. And there's just so many things that can be talked about there in terms of news items, and there's an enormous amount of case study information out there. I think 2008, around that kind of time. So under that, you've then got a number of sub-knowledge statements. So in this particular case, you've got 2, K.1.1 on the screen, K.1.2, but there's actually 4 in this particular section altogether. So in this particular part of the occupational specialism, students will start by looking at different aspects of culture, move on to looking at meaning and applications of conduct. And so you can see there that we're looking for them to be able, the skill we're looking for is for them to be able to apply the experience that they have and the learning that they've had, the teaching that they've had from you, in order to be able to apply this to various case studies, or to be able to apply it to an unknown, be able to apply it to a case study of some description. Okay. Moving on, I just want to mention this. On some of the specifications, that's not the right word to put it, some of the boxes, sorry, you will see that there's also the relevant general competencies referenced in the right-hand column. So in this particular case, referenced against K 1.3.6 and 1.3.7, we've got E1, 2, E4, E5. What these are, just in case you weren't aware, are the general competencies. In this particular case, they are the English competencies. A full list of these can be found on page 218, very specific, 218 of the finance specification. So really just a way so that you can see how students are going to be expected to be able to demonstrate the general competencies in English, maths and digital competencies. So in this particular slide, this is actually from the insurance practitioner specification. I'm just sharing this one because it's really showing you the level of knowledge required to be able to deliver this component. Now, I know none of you who are actually online with me at the moment are planning to deliver this. And I'm almost reinforcing what you're saying in that, yeah, there's quite a bit of specialist knowledge there. And so I think you're right in what you're saying, in that it is this specialist knowledge that's the bit that needs work on. So we need to think about how we're going to do that and how we're actually going to put that together in order to be able to deliver a meaningful course for these students. And I threw the insurance practitioner one in there because it was the bit that I thought, oh gosh, yes, that's quite tricky. Okay, so let's have a little think about this. A chance for you to put some stuff in the group chat again. Thinking about how we are going to teach the occupational specialisms, the kind of specialist knowledge aside, what do we need to be thinking about when we are delivering these particular occupational specialisms? So thinking about approaches, and I've got some ideas on the next screen actually that I will just put up so that you can have a little bit of a think about it. But there's some topic areas I think we perhaps need to just consider, and by topic areas I mean sort of areas of delivery perhaps that we might want to think about. So as part of this activity, again, please use the group chat. What are you thinking about in terms of learner starting points? So I'm thinking these will be different for the majority of students. So some will have no knowledge whatsoever of the specialism that's been chosen, whereas some others will have perhaps carried out work experience. I appreciate that's going to have been quite difficult in the last couple of years. Many won't have been able to do any face-to-face work experience, but I'm wondering if any might have been able to do any sort of digital work experience. So sort of delivery planning then is going to need to take into account any gaps that we've assumed or not assumed, any that emerged that we've not previously considered. Delivery plans, schemes of work and assessment need to be sort of flexible to be able to adapt to this. How are you guys going to judge this sort of learner starting point? What are you going to do with this? Working with work placement to cover some, yeah, absolutely, Karen. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Working with work placements for them to cover some of the tricky areas is a great idea. I mean, ultimately, the people who they're doing the work placements with, the industry specialists, technically, are going to be at least in a far better, more up-to-date place than anybody who's just in education, because they are actually obviously working with it day in, day out. Things like, for example, on that insurance one, when we're thinking about underwriter risks, that's something that even myself, for somebody who worked in banking a while back, gosh, I'd really need to look that up and really think about that one. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. So that kind of two-way dialogue, working, in tandem with the industry specialists through the work placements is a great idea. Any other thoughts on how we can assess learner starting points and how we can perhaps try and harmonise them as much as possible? No. Great idea. Yeah, great. Okay. So, Karen, you're not going to get them to make their choice until Easter, ideally, of the first year. Yeah, I think that's great. Particularly, I know your college is thinking about maybe doing all four, or at least a selection of them. So it's great that the students are going to get the option to be able to choose that. And yeah, Aaron is saying it. OS will commence after the majority of the core, possibly some work placement. Brilliant. But I think that's great. And I think that will really make a big difference to harmonising, as we say, those learner starting points. And at least it gives the students an opportunity to really get an idea of what it is they've chosen and what the actual industry is like before you take it any further. So, yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's really helpful. Topics and subjects that can be taught together. Have you thought about that at all? Is this something you've given any time to? Perhaps looking at where in the core and the OS you could occupational specialism, sorry, that you could potentially teach together. I know I had somebody on the core program last week who were planning on, I'm not sure if it was you, Karen, but it was certainly somebody last week who was saying that they were actually going to be teaching some of their core with the T-level in business admin, so that they could potentially try and teach those two things together. But again, this is all dependent on cohort sizes. Linked topics in the core were kept OS to second year only. Yeah, thanks, Laura, that's helpful. Aaron, I believe so. I will make a note of that question. And just and ask Mark Cousins, who's the head of this, to respond to that. I believe if it hasn't done, I believe there is one on the go, but I will check that for you because I think actually it's quite no problem. I think it's quite important just to obviously try and streamline this as much as possible, which leads me quite nicely onto the third bit, because if you are perhaps sort of teaching parts of the core and the OS together, it potentially actually adds further context to the learning, particularly when we're saying that we're asking these students to develop and really embed these skills and really gain a deep understanding of the content, and being able to add any sort of context would be great. So bringing the topics to life. Trips and visits, gosh, please let us be able to go out on trips and visits over this next year. That would be great if we could do that. I know that Speakers for Schools was mentioned in the core session that I delivered last week, and that might be something to think about. As I mentioned, potentially anything that can be done online to get the right person in front of the student is obviously a good idea as well. And as you've already mentioned today, the students' own experiences in their industry placement is also going to be a really good idea for this. Good old offset words, logical sequencing. We already knew about this. We know it's important. We know we do that. We know that's what we do day in, day out, because that's the sort of bread and butter of teaching. But I thought I'd throw it in there anyway. So thinking about how we can sequence it in a way that works for the students, definitely, but in a way that actually works for the delivery plan, so that we know what's coming next. We know better than they do what's coming next. So therefore, how can we kind of put those underlying skills in order to be able to then build on that to scaffold the new items of knowledge, development of skills. So just a little sort of question there that I'm not necessarily looking for an answer for, but just sort of something to think about. So how are you going to make sure that the delivery plan or the scheme of work and assessment actually addresses this? So I'm throwing in a scheme of assessment there as well. What I mean there is your formative assessment, what you're doing on a sort of weekly, monthly basis that will help you to be able to then deliver the rest of the course. The final bit there, co-teaching of occupational specialisms. I think that's not true, many centres will decide to do just one, but that is not necessarily going to work for everybody. And thanks, Laura. Yeah, I think what would add context would be their placements. Yeah, absolutely. Placements are a major concern. Not sure how we'll get placements yet. Contacted local so I can get some work. Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and that's always going to be a bit of an issue. I think ultimately it's something that when this was put together, it's such a great idea in terms of 45 days of work experience is so important that there are some logistical issues with that. I'm not sure whether Pearson themselves have got any plans for helping out with that. But I know that it's such an important part of this qualification that there are plans afoot. In my own centre, we've been delivering the T-level in science, and that's been quite tricky given where we are, deepest, darkest Cornwall. So it's quite tricky to find specific placements for them. Eventually, we managed to find them all. But yeah, I take your point completely about client confidentiality. It may be that we can give them some sort of assurance through our own centres to confirm that maybe they'll sign a confidentiality agreement or something similar. But yeah, it might be. I'm surprised they're not letting you in though. That sounds annoying. It might be. Yeah, financial advisors. Yeah, I kind of get it with the financial advisors, but you'd think the banks would be a bit more up for it. Has anybody else got anything they can add to that? Aaron, I'll come back to your point in a minute. Anybody got any help for Laura there? No. I'll just let people think about that one, Laura, and add in any points, any thoughts that they have, whilst I just talk about Aaron's point, which I've now lost. It is a disclaimer sentiment, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering about the bigger banks, Lloyds, Barclays, many others are available, of course. But if anybody else has got anything they'd like to add, then please do. So Aaron said 2 forms of formative assessment every 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah, I like that. Exam questions, ESP project tasks. Yeah, excellent. Okay. And I think actually other things to think about. So having something formal or formative, I'm thinking you mean formal, but I'm not 100% sure. Think about informal assessment as well. So think about those kind of low stakes assessment at the start as part of your starters, or things that potentially could be used to develop long-term memory. Talked a little bit about that in the core training I did last week, but potentially thinking about how you could potentially try and keep this in their minds over such a long period of time might also be worth thinking about. So maybe a bit of low stakes assessment, whether that's going to be use of the various different online platforms that are available to generate good starters, then that might be an idea, as well as other sort of quizzes or I don't know, starter activities that you can think of throughout your lessons. Okay, so I think that's everything I've got on that one. And actually, this is a fairly short session. What I have on the next slide is the support that's available for you. So whilst this is probably quite well known to you in terms of what's available online, you've got there the specimen assessment materials. Now, I'm actually just looking as I speak to see whether they've been uploaded, because I know they are imminent in terms of, and I think that's actually going to make a huge difference in terms of your planning, to have a bit of an idea as to what the actual assessment materials will look like. It's not coming up. Oh, it's just, there it is. So there will be specimen assessment materials for the core examinations, as well as the employer set project, and also the occupational specialisms themselves. So that information will be forthcoming, and if it's not there already, and I can't see it quickly, there it is, then it will be online very soon. I'm just looking on our website now at the teaching and learning materials, and they have not changed. So that they're not there yet, but they are imminent. There's also going to be some exemplification materials and some additional sample assessment materials. So in addition to the initial ones that come out, there will be some further ones further down the line, as well as topic guides, case studies. And I think, again, in terms of trying to overcome this specialism, this gap in specialist knowledge, it could well be that those case studies could be a good starting point. So then perhaps, I was wondering about students then doing projects based on those case studies. I know we spoke the other day about the Lloyd's case study that's available, and it may well be then that you taking that case study and maybe getting students to do a further research project on that may be a good way of perhaps trying to deepen that understanding. Examiners' reports will be available once, obviously, we've done exams, as will Results Plus, which is just a brilliant way of analysing the results. If you've not used it before, it's great in terms of item level analysis. So question by question, really, by student, by class, by cohort, by cluster of providers. It's a great way of working out what went well and what could do better, or, what could go better, basically. So worth having a little look at that. So in terms of what's on the website at the moment, what you can see on the screen is what is currently available. Now, I don't think they say new, because when I put this together, they were quite new, but they're not quite so new now. So you may well have already seen these. But what you can see there is a number of different topic lesson plans, industry resource links. We've got some introductory PowerPoints. We've got some worksheets. And this is just an initial sort of starter of starting to sort of bring some materials together for you. There will hopefully be more of those. Will key dates timeline be available? It will be. In fact, Aaron, I think we've already got one of those. I'll ask Mark just to send that through to you if you've not got it already. But yes, there will be a key dates timeline. Yeah, thanks for your question. That's good. So there is lots of things already available there, and like we say, this is just a starter. I have it on good authority that there are more things being written. So there will be some more things available for you to have a look at, and these are a great way of perhaps addressing the questions over breadth and depth, certainly depth, because obviously this is written by Pearson themselves. So it gives you an idea of the content that they had in mind when they were putting this specification together. So I'm actually nearly done with my my kind of presentation, the things that I need to talk to you about specifically. But before I sort of move through to further support and how to contact us, is there anything else anybody wanted to ask or wanted to check? Or if you didn't want to put it in the group chat, you could put it in the Q&As if you wanted me to answer anything a bit later on. I'll just give you a moment or two just to think about that before rushing ahead. think certainly from what I'm picking up from you guys so far, is that this is something that you're not thinking about doing until much later on anyway. So the occupational specialism seems quite far in the future for most people. And I think it's definitely worth keeping an eye on any future events that come out. Obviously, these sorts of events will be built on, and obviously more and more information will come out over time as well. I think certainly once the sample assessment materials land, that will be quite helpful to us all. I think it'd be good to have. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I thought exactly the same, because I teach on the A-level economics and business, and there's some absolutely great Facebook pages for those, which I believe are actually run by Colin Leith, the subject advisor, who is also the subject advisor for T-levels. But I will just let him know that there is an appetite for this, and that it would be good to have one for T-levels as well. I'm just writing that down. Yeah, agree completely. Any other thoughts on that, guys? If you think of anything later on, please do let us know. One of the rounds for exams for the core. Yeah, it is. Core is, and I got this wrong last week, so I went away and double checked it. But yes, it is June in year 1, and it is November and June in year 2. You're absolutely correct. Exactly as you put it there is absolutely correct. It is on the T-level specification. I'm just going to put it on my screen a moment. There it is. But yeah, I'm just going to give you the page number. It's quite near the start. But yes, they have actually, yeah, no problem. They have said that will be the case. And again, when you're thinking about how to deliver this and, when this is going to work, it's worth just knowing that so that you can, plan how you're going to do it. Can't see the page number, of course. It's always the way when you're trying to look for something quickly. As this can attend the session. Yes, absolutely. We'll get that sorted for you, Laura. No problem. Right. Yeah, can't see it quickly, but there is a summary of key information on page 1 of the specification. Oh, why did I see that? I thought it was there, but it's page 1 of is the actual sort of generally when it will be available. But yes, there will be core exams available in June of the first year, and then November and June going forwards. So there is some further support, as you can see, available on the screen. And there is just a little bit more information there on how to contact us. Now, the Pearson support portal is a great way of contacting Pearson if you have any questions at all. I do agree that I think Facebook is a nice way of asking others if they've got similar issues as well. But I've used the support portal a lot for various different things, and they are great at getting back to you. So that's quite a good way of doing it. There are also a couple of yeah, no problem. Yeah, you will have access to this recording, Karen. Yeah, it's I believe you can download the documents actually from this screen. Alternatively, sorry, that's the recording. I believe you will. I will double check that for you, but yes, my understanding is that yes, you will. There are 2 email addresses you might want to just make a note of as well that are now on your screen. So you've got T-level admin support and T-level teachers support for either admin or for teachers queries. That would obviously be good for you to have as well. So is there anything else before we round up today? Anything else that you wanted to check with me or ask whilst I'm here? I'm just going to double check the Q&A as well. No, that's fine. Just pausing just a few minutes, just to make sure it gives anybody a chance to type. Of course you can, Aaron. Yeah, ask away. What were you thinking? Okay. Yeah, none in particular. So there's nothing specific that we're actually either insisting upon or suggesting. Generally, Microsoft Office Suite would be quite useful for students if they wanted to be able to sort of write up reports and things like that, but it's not essential. We're also just saying that they will need access to perhaps a computer room, so that they can, shows my age, so that they can get used to actually working on the tasks online. Any equipment you'd recommend we purchase? No, nothing specific at all. Pearson have actually been quite sort of specific in saying no, there isn't anything that they would specifically recommend. Okay, lovely. Thanks, Aaron. That's good. So nothing else in particular that Pearson are saying that you would actually need. Quite different, really, to perhaps the science T level or the construction T level, if you've been involved in any of those, where there really was some very specific things that are needed, but it just reflects the nature of the subject, I suppose. So, any other thoughts, anything else you want to share before we round this up? Okay. Well, everyone, it's been a pleasure. I hope you've at least got something out of today in terms of what to prepare for and what to do. Aaron, I'm really pleased. Thank you for that. And if anybody would like to send me a question, please do. But otherwise, I will send you off into this beautiful sunshine with this lovely extra hour that we now have in the evening. And enjoy your evening. And thank you very much for your attendance. You guys have been absolutely great. I appreciate your participation in the group chat. It's been wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody.